Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you with the words of Rumi, adapted from Rumi. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Catherine will now light the chalice.
You're muted, Catherine.
Sorry. This chalice lighting is by Lynn Kinvey. This chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get where they expected you to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting, not by number, but by silence, by wild abandon, with a brush you made yourself from light deep inside. Startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you. Finally, a true story.
Morning, everyone. When I was asked to give a reflection on this election and what it means to me, I was at a loss. I am not in a good place. As the daughter of a sometime historian, I personally believe we have not learned the lessons of history and are headed into territory that faced the modern world about 100 years ago. This is a scary place. I have family members and friends who are suicidal right now and have been for the last week. It's very hard. They're not alone. The Trevor Project for LGBTQ youth has told the Washington Post it has seen a 125% increase in calls and texts, and the crisis text line has seen its volume increase by a third since Election Day. There are many who are worried about their lives, their marriages, and their ability to be able to control their own bodies. I've spent so much time in the last week acting as a counselor to these friends. Other friends who I've known for a long time voted for a future that means the end of protections for the weak and voted for someone who was against their stated beliefs, who professed Christianity while violating the tenet demand of all Christians to care for the homeless and the poor and the orphans and widows. What can I say that can provide comfort in this dark hour? It is true we do not know what the future holds. The future may not hold what my friends worry about and what was promised to them in the electric and for which people voted. There may not be prison camps in our future, but as Joy Chakai has told us, there have been in our past, and people voted for someone who promised to bring them back. We know the history of internment camps, and we know what happens to people who are put in positions of power over others. This is very frightening. As someone for whom perhaps the most important artistic influence on my life was the mini-series Holocaust in the late 1970s. All I can say is be prepared. Do not be naive. Do not sit idly by and wait for the worst to happen. Take care of yourself, your family, and your loved ones. Do not go gently into that good night. And remember always as well the words of Eleanor Roosevelt. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You're able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You can do the thing you cannot do. We must do the things that we cannot do together. We must face the darkness and bring what hope we can. Do the things you cannot do. In ending, I will read to you a poem by Chelan Harkini. It's when the earth shakes and the foundations crumble that our light is called to rise up. It's when everything falls away and shakes us to the core and wakens us of our hidden ghosts that we dig deeper to find once inaccessible strength. It's in times when division is fierce that we must reach for each other and hold each other much tighter. Do not fall away now. This is the time to rise. Your light is being summoned. Your integrity is being tested, that it may stand more tall. When everything collapses, we must find within us that which is indomitable. Rise and find the strength in your heart. Rise and find the strength in each other. Burn through your devastation. Make it your fuel. Bring forth your light. Now is not the time to be afraid of the dark.
I think Doug has some music for us now. Thank you.
If I had stopped to listen once or twice, if I had closed my love and opened my eyes, if I had cooled my head and warmed my heart, I'd not be on this road tonight. Carry on, carry on, feeling sorry for yourself. It doesn't save you from your troubled mind. Walk down that lonesome road all by yourself. Don't turn your head back over your shoulder, and only stop to rest yourself when the silver moon is shining bright, shining bright above the trees.
Good morning. My name's Bob Meyerson, and I tell you I feel some sense of anxiety introducing today's guest speaker. None of us would be attending had Reverend Eklof not led us to giving the NAUA both a birth and a purpose. Through his own sacrifice, we are here. And while it may seem foolish to introduce someone in their own home, I'm nevertheless happy to do so. Reverend Todd, I regret the burden that was placed on you and your family just for believing in UU principles. But what you have done in spite of the personal attacks on you has caused many of us to renew our appreciation of freedom of thought and expression as gifts. I am eager to hear your message today, Reverend Todd. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate those kind and thoughtful sentiments. Yeah, I mean, it's been rough, but this is the world we live in, a world that it gets rough at times. And when we ask, where do we go from here, which is sort of the subject I'll be speaking about, I think we're best to remember that there's always rough times, and the best answer is to be ourselves and continue to follow our values and principles the best we can in whatever circumstances we find. So and by the way, thank you also to the NAUA worship team who've been doing just an outstanding job of putting services together for the past nearly 2 years now. I think you just do a wonderful job. I wish I was able to attend more. It seems like I'm always traveling to go speak at another church on a weekend I have off, but anyway, it's really great to be here. I did discuss this topic, of course, last Sunday here in Spokane. Some of you probably attended that. And I wanted this one to be different, to be unique for you. So it'll have a bit of a different tone. In the sermon I gave last week, I did try to do some big picture perspective and then narrow in on, some of the strategies that we can use as individuals to cope with the reality we now find ourselves in. Those strategies are going to be we're geared a lot more towards the individual than what I'll do today. So if you feel like you want that or need that, I recommend you go watch that sermon online as well. Today, I want to focus on more of a bigger picture and then the broader perspective of where we go from here as Unitarians. And I want to start by saying that, in times like these, I often think about that scene in the original Planet of the Apes movie when the stranded astronaut George Taylor, played by Charlton Heston, of course, regains his voice and begins shouting, "It's a madhouse! A madhouse!" Taylor, you probably know, is stunned by the absurdity of a world where apes rule and humans are dumb. In light of the recent election of Donald Trump, I can relate, as I imagine many of those who voted against him can. For us, it feels like the world is upside down. We consider the president-elect to be the most obviously unfit person ever to run for the position, let alone to win it twice. He has a personal history of bankruptcies, bad business dealings, alleged abuse of women, and other crimes, including most recently a felony conviction. His divisive rhetoric is often incoherent, inconsistent, extreme, obscene, and untruthful. He says things that are profoundly racist, sexist, and misogynistic, and as we saw on January 6, 2020, sometimes incendiary. During his campaign, he made false and outrageous claims about election fraud, higher crime rates, that Democrats are aborting babies after they're born, that Kamala Harris was given the answers before the debate, and that Haitian immigrants are eating our pets. And most recently, he spoke about using the armed forces to go after those Americans he calls radical left lunatics. It's always good to question ourselves and to wonder, especially in light of his resounding win, if those of us who didn't vote for him are somehow missing something. And we probably are. But we can rest assured, based upon all that I've just mentioned, that we are not crazy, no matter how many people voted for him. There's something terribly wrong with our country. Things are upside down. It's a madhouse, a madhouse. So how do we explain this bizarro outcome? Perhaps the first step is in recognizing Trump as an authoritarian personality who demands loyalty oaths and admires the worst dictators in the world, is to understand the circumstances that lead so many people to want such a leader to begin with. After leaving Germany in opposition to the Nazis just prior to the Holocaust, social psychologist Erich Fromm spent much of his life trying to figure this out. Fromm attributed the rise of authoritarian societies to widespread feelings of powerlessness, isolation, and fear in the face of rapid change and instability. To escape this existential anxiety, ordinary people are willing to sacrifice their freedoms and reason for the sense of security, order, and belonging that results from conformity and submission to an authority. The point of his 1941 book, Escape from Freedom, this is the point of it, I should say, in which he argues that in order to truly be free, we have to be authentic and risk rejection. In order to truly be free, we have to risk being authentic and rejection. Yet there is little we as social animals fear worse than isolation and exclusion. But if we cannot learn to resolve this tension between freedom and belonging, then we will seek to escape from freedom by choosing authoritarian leaders and authoritarian societies that require conformity, loyalty, and obedience. And this might be okay if authoritarianism truly resulted in greater security and belonging, but it never does and never can. Authoritarianism is a dead end because it stifles innovation and progress. We cannot move forward when we are oppressed or under somebody else's thumb. In his 1955 book, The Sane Society, Fromm is the first ever to have argued that it's possible for an entire society to become insane. Think about that for a second. This book deals, he said, not with individual pathology, but with the pathology of normalcy. The pathology of normalcy, particularly with the pathology of contemporary Western society. It doesn't seem insane when so many people all think and act alike. It seems normal, which is what he means by the pathology of normalcy. But insanity is the state of being delusional, out of touch with reality. If an entire society rejects the means by which we can better face and cope with reality, like reason and science and real facts, not alternative facts, then it's fair to say the entire society is, as Charlton Heston screams, a madhouse. In yet another of his books, The Heart of Man, first published in 1964, year I was born, Fromm further distinguishes between what he calls the necrophilious orientation, which he says is directed against life, and is the quintessential, or quintessence, I should say, of evil, the most severe pathology, and the root of the most vicious destructiveness and inhumanity. He distinguishes between the necrophilious orientation and the biophilious orientation. The most elementary form of this orientation, he says, is expressed in the tendency of all living organisms to live. But it is also expressed as a concern for all life. The person who fully loves life is attracted by the process of life and growth in all spheres, he says. Good is reverence for life, all that enhances life, growth, and unfolding. What we're experiencing in the U.S. today and in much of the world, at least from a Frommian perspective, is an insane society. an insane society unable to cope with reality that has embraced a destructive, necrophilious, death-loving orientation. It hides this insanity even from itself by paying homage to life, going as far as calling itself pro-life, by championing the unborn, the lives of people whom they bear no real responsibility or financial burden for, while doing all sorts of things that make life miserable for others, including destroying the planet itself by willfully ignoring and exacerbating global warming. They like to pretend they have sound reasons to believe it isn't happening, which only proves how delusional and unable to cope with reality they really are. In addition to gaslighting the rest of us, they distract us from reality by claiming that the real danger is the made-up invasion of millions and millions of criminals and rapists and murderers constantly crossing our borders to take black jobs and eat our pets. Yet they ignore the increasing number of catastrophic Category 4 and 5 hurricanes that really are crossing our borders and destroying our homes and communities and lives. They ignore the now year-long fire season that stretches from coast to coast, burning to the ground all that we have worked for, and are making it impossible to get or keep homeowners insurance that protects us against such devastation. They ignore the smoke crossing national borders and state borders that make it unsafe for us to simply go outside and breathe. They ignore atmospheric rivers drowning our communities and F4 and 5 tornadoes wiping us out from within our borders. It didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be this way. President Nixon began acting on this threat as early as 1970 by creating the Environmental Protection Agency, and President Carter followed through by reducing the national speed limit, calling for fuel conservation and solar power. But all that changed with Ronald Reagan in 1980, and the GOP has ever since done everything it can to prevent us from meaningfully addressing the worst existential crisis in human history. One of Trump's first actions at the start of his first term was to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement, and he's now ready to end programs promoting renewable energy growth and is planning to drill, baby, drill our public lands for more oil and gas. That's insane. That's the necrophilious, destructive, death-loving orientation that shows no serious regard for the lives of those of us who have actually been born. The GOP is also the party that refuses to pass any sensible gun regulations, even as the lives of born children, among other Americans, are routinely gunned down in their classrooms, in theaters and churches and grocery stores and nightclubs and concerts and community centers, you name it. Most recently, the Republican-controlled Supreme Court couldn't even agree to ban bump stocks, a device that effectively turns an already deadly military-style assault rifle into a machine gun. The same court that also recently ended abortion rights in support of the hypocritical and ludicrous Right to Life movement. It's also the political entity that has refused to do anything to improve America's broken and possibly expensive and unjust healthcare system, even to the point of wanting to overturn the small improvements Barack Obama established, the small improvements Barack Obama established with his affordable healthcare plan. It's the same with most government programs meant to help people who are economically disadvantaged. The GOP wants to end them all. About the only thing they do want to spend more money on is the military budget, which is already costing Americans more than $1 trillion a year. Their priority are weapons of war that can destroy and take life, not that protects and fosters life and human wellness. All of this, at least for me, helps explain the mad times we're living in. The U.S. is suffering from collective madness, the necrophilious, death-loving orientation, only we don't know it because it's rooted in the pathology of normalcy. Isn't that what Kamala Harris kept saying? We've got to get back to normalcy. We want somebody who's normal. No, apparently we don't. But it's not just Republican voters suffering from such insanity. There's also a good number, as we all know, of people on the extreme left who also want to force their madness on the rest of us by erecting a punitive and authoritarian culture that silences and demonizes anyone who disagrees with them. Call it woke, cancel culture, political correctness, neo-racism, identitarianism, or something else. We know it's happening because it's happened to our own religion, which has been all but taken over by this mindset's adherents. Perhaps this left-wing version of the necrophilious orientation hasn't become so obviously destructive as the right-wing version has, not yet. But we know it is against life because of its desire to control others. For the biophilious, life-loving orientation, Fromm says, is capable of wondering and wants to mold and to influence by love, reason, and example, not by force, by cutting things apart, by the bureaucratic manner of administrating people as if they were things. So that's my diagnosis. The US, like much of today's world, has gone insane in response to the widespread feelings of powerlessness, isolation, and fear in the face of rapid change and instability, resulting in the rise of authoritarian leaders who offer the false promise of security and belonging. Knowing this, we are best prepared to consider how we can and ought to respond to the insane circumstances we now find ourselves in. Firstly, we must not waste much time lamenting what we cannot change. The election is over, and the results are what they are. It's okay to feel sad or angry and anxious about it, but our energies should be directed in meaningful, positive, and life-affirming ways. It may sound corny, but we really must become the change that we wish to see. And this means helping others feel less fearful of the future and of their fellow human beings so that they can better cope with the reality around them and see through their delusions, collective or otherwise. I ended last week's sermon, following again the immediate aftermath of the election, with a list of strategies to help individuals cope with the new reality we're in. Don't panic or catastrophize. Rely on the stamina and grit, as Joyce mentioned earlier, that you gained, especially after Trump's last election. Don't give up. Keep caring. Take a break from it all when you need to. Focus on what you can change, not what you can't. See the bigger picture by recognizing the historic moment we are in and must respond to. And stay true to our liberal values, no matter the consequences or what circumstances we are in. So again, I refer you to that sermon if you want more detailed descriptions of these strategies and my reasons for suggesting them. Here I want to talk less about what we can do for ourselves and more about what we can do for our world, a world, as I've argued, that has become a madhouse, a world that is suffering from the pathology of normalcy, a world that is insane. As religious liberals, and Unitarians in particular, we have long responded to such insanity, to insane times, by promoting and upholding our most cherished life-affirming principles: human dignity, freedom, reason, and tolerance. Human dignity implies universality. That is to say, all people have dignity on the grounds of being human, no matter where they are from, what they believe, what their gender or age or color, and so forth. If you see another human being, you know they have dignity. Authoritarian societies, on the other hand, are built on the fear of others and maintained by conformity. Authoritarians rise to power by encouraging us to fear some evil outsider and hold power over us by making us afraid to be different. Universal human dignity does the opposite by reminding us there are no evil outsiders because we are all part of one human family and should not fear our differences or fear our own authenticity. Likewise, our devotion to freedom, especially the freedom to think and speak for ourselves and the freedom of equal access to the benefits of society, prevents us from excluding or discriminating against others. When such devotion is widespread, then like Voltaire, we may disagree with others, and we should, but we shall defend to the death their right to disagree with us or anyone else. Such devotion to this first principle eliminates the need for conformity that is indicative of authoritarian societies. Such freedom to think outside the box, furthermore, is what allows the innovation and inventiveness that leads to human and social progress. If we're all cloistered within one idea, we cannot move forward together. We must be free to question and wonder and think differently. Reason, with its dependence on substantiated evidence and facts, on science and proper thought formation, further helps us to counter the kind of delusional, paranoid, unexamined, and unquestionable kind of thinking that can lead us into the pathology of normalcy and collective insanity. Reason requires us to check our own assumptions, but also to trust that others can think for themselves and should be allowed to do so. That's our real respect for reason, not just thinking well, but trusting where we disagree. People have a right to reason for themselves and are capable of doing so. They don't need me to do it for them, or you, or Donald Trump, or anybody else. But above all, what the world needs most right now, and what we have to offer, is our devotion to what may be considered Unitarianism's founding principle, tolerance, from which all these others, human dignity, universalism, freedom, and reason, must follow. When the Unitarian king of Hungary, John Sigismund, passed the Edict of Torda in 1568, the first religious toleration law in history, he did so in response to a society that was even more divided and genuinely threatened by outsiders than is our own. His kingdom was situated between the Ottoman Empire to the west and its Austrian enemies, the east. Within the kingdom lived Catholics and Protestants and Muslims, all of whom were part of a world that did not accept such differences. So the wise king made it illegal to persecute and discriminate against others based upon their different beliefs, in order to ease tensions, lessen fears, and maintain peace. And this is what our divided society needs today for the very same reasons and purposes. For we cannot prosper or progress so long as we remain divided and hell-bent on forcing everyone to think as we do, to conform, or to simply keep their mouths shut. Peace and progress cannot depend upon the impossibility of forcing everyone to think alike. Fortunately, such tolerance is part of human nature when it's not being hijacked by the authoritarian appeal to baser instincts. And this is proven by the universal golden rule found in most human societies throughout time. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or conversely, as it's most often stated, do not do unto others what you would not want done to yourself. Right? Don't bomb people's neighborhoods. Don't indiscriminately kill people to get at those you're after. Don't shut down the voices of others. All those sort of things. I especially love the tales of angelic encounters found in the Hebrew and Christian scriptures because they often begin with the angels saying, "Be not afraid," or "Fear not." In these dark days when authoritarians are gaining power around the world by stoking our fears against each other, we should appeal to the better angels of human nature by reminding one another that forcing everyone to think alike has never worked. That, as our old Unitarian saying goes, we need not think alike to love alike. The only thing that has ever helped us progress and prosper is learning to accept one another, to live and let live, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Where do we go from here? The same direction we have been going, or at least as Unitarians and liberals should have been going all along. Difficult as the times we're living in appear to be, especially in light of the recent election, at least as far as us liberals are concerned, we are equipped, perhaps better than anyone else, not only to get through it, but to help others get through the madness by reminding them of who we are, all of us, when we are at our best. Thank you.
Shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet, who stern in passion stress, a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
Okay, for today's closing words, these are a Celtic blessing, and unfortunately the source and copyright holders are unknown. May dawn find you awake and alert, approaching your new day with dreams, possibilities, and promises. May evening find you gracious and fulfilled. May you go into the night blessed, sheltered, and protected. May your soul calm, console, and renew you. And by way of extinguishing the chalice, we will do so with these words. As we return into the world, may we carry the light within our hearts, the warmth within our souls, the stillness within our minds, and the wisdom within our actions. May our harvests be as enriching as they are bountiful. So mote it be. And that is by Allison Ehrman.
Well, I'd like to thank Todd and the whole worship team for this. It's been a great service.